Brought to you by Knights of Awakening. This is the Labyrinth. Okay, a lot of terms in mysticism get misused, even if they're mystical terms. So we all know that I have my own beef with the word binding and the way it gets used by a lot of people. Even though I have to use it that way so that the now misinformed community understands what I'm saying. But a lot of scientific terms get misused too. And I picked my favorite 5 top misused scientific terms, rated them on a scale of 1 to 5. I've given them stars next to them. We're going to talk about these terms, what they actually mean, why they get misused, and we're going to go over the general misuse of science terms in general to promote mysticism. A lot of people who have a lot of respect for their work misuse these terms. That doesn't make their work invalid, it just makes their understanding either of science or their willingness to use these terms, if they do understand it, as an explanation. It means that they're not using this as a explanation by example or by similarity, by saying this is similar to. And that may be the only real crime against science they commit. A lot of people, though, do think that this is how it works. You know, these terms mean this, and therefore it gives validity to magic via science. And you'll never hear me say that science doesn't work, and you'll never hear me say that magic doesn't work. What you will hear me say, though, is that the two don't always mix, and that you need to have an awareness of that, and you can study both and understand both and recognize that they're two very different systems for understanding the world. They come from very different paradigms, and you don't need to mix them together. We'll get into why people do that so much, though. First term I want to hit on is quantum entanglement. I hear this one so much. People talk about quantum entanglement and they use it as a reason for astral travel. They use it as a reason for coincidental occurrences, which are part of magic. They use it as a reason for telepathy, telekinesis. They use it as a reason for any result they achieve in magic. And the truth is, quantum entanglement doesn't work that way. Quantum entanglement is not something that happens on a large scale. It's something that happens on a very, very, very minute, very small scale to a very limited amount of particles. These are quanta, small particles of matter that are below the atomic scale. So, if you have trouble thinking about how small an atom is, we're now getting into something smaller. We're looking at 1 or 2 of these at a time, or a handful at most, being changed, and then over distance, that change has a repercussion, not always an exact matching repercussion. The best example is there are certain particles that when split create subparticles, those quanta, and if separated over distance, when one spins in one direction, the other one has a counter spin, no matter what the distance is. This has great purposes for communications technology. It does nothing for magic. You are not going to split all of the particles in your body in that way. If you did, from a scientific point of view, you would be a particle bomb, okay? The released force of energy, if you were able to split all of the particles in your body to achieve astral projection, for instance, which is a lot of people presume quantum entanglement to entail, would blow a hole through the center of the earth, okay? It would be a blast force that would annihilate all of mankind, most likely. We're talking about a bomb made out of you, more destructive than any fusion device ever imagined. Isn't that lovely? No, you're not doing that. The second big one is the uncertainty principle. It's another 5-star. I hate it when people use this, because the uncertainty principle has to do with observation. What it's saying is that in order to observe, you must interact with something. Light interacts with an object, and then interacts with our eyes, and then we receive information about it. That is the simplest version of that. With that in mind, to observe light, we have to alter light. To observe anything that we place light upon, we are now heating it. When you get into quantum mechanics, you get into a much larger impact because you're now throwing small particles at other particles. And an example I always use for this, it's like being blind, but being able to hear car crashes. And you have a car somewhere out on the road, and you want to know where it is, so you start throwing other cars at it until a car hits it. The harder the car hits it, the louder and more pronounced the sound, the better able you are to tell where the other car is from the impact. Well, that's a heck of a thought, isn't it? But it means that the more certain you are of where something is, the less certain you are of where it'll be, because you've had to apply more force to get more information, and therefore you've altered it in some way. You are less certain of its existing state. This one does kind of scale up to the larger scale sciences, and it scales down, but this is really a core level quantum physics understanding of nature, and people misuse it to say that anything you observe you change. It's being changed if you can observe it, but it's not your will that is changing it. And I'm not going to say that your will doesn't affect things you're observing. In fact, I believe quite the opposite, but I don't have a science background and flashy quantum physics statements to help provide that. I have years of experience in the arts. With that, the next one, vibration. This is a 2-star one, because looking at its definitions, which I have over here on my other screen, it can mean the periodic motion of the particles of an elastic body or medium in alternately opposite directions, okay? From the position of equilibrium when that equilibrium has been distributed. Or, in other words, shaking. It is a very scientific-based term, but it's given a 2-star rating because there is a metaphysical application in one of its definitions. This is from the Webster's Dictionary definitions. A characteristic emanation, aura, or spirit that infuses or vitalizes someone or something, and that can instinctively be sensed or experienced, often used in plural. Like the song Good Vibrations. It was probably more of an emotional word, because in its second it says a distinctive, usually emotional atmosphere capable of being sensed. Again, usually used in plural. Vibrations kind of gets a pass. It's a 2-star misuse, because most people are using it to validify their mysticism, saying, well, I matched vibrations. And really what they're saying is that they matched sensations of vibrations. So there's a bit of inaccuracy with that. Vibration gets kind of a pass. Not a lot. The next one has to do with vibrations, sort of. It has to do with occurrences. And it's called frequency. A frequency of something has to do with the times that a periodic function repeats the same sequence of values, or the number of repetitions of a thing. In terms of energy or oscillations within a medium, what this means is that you have a certain amount of repetitions of a waveform, scientifically speaking. That probably made no sense to a lot of people. So a better way of looking at it is counting the number of ripples in anything as an impact is made, or as, an event is occurring. It's a very difficult thing for most people to understand, the term frequency. I'm not very good at explaining it. I don't have a science degree, so I'm not going to be very good at explaining it. What I'm going to tell you is that frequency is a very precise measuring system. And if we're misusing vibration, oh wow, are we misusing frequency. It's a 4-star. 4-star misused, because you're not going to be precise enough to match frequencies. What you're doing is you're matching states of feeling. In mysticism, we use the term frequency because it sounds really big and bold, and we'll get into that in a bit. So, the last one of these, okay, is the least used wrong. I was surprised when I looked it up myself to get the data for this, looking over the definitions. Energy. It's the capability of acting or being active. And it has the third definition within its first set is a usually positive spiritual force. All these definitions come from the Webster Dictionary. The energy flowing through all people. Yeah, the problem is people misuse it because they presume that the spiritual energy can be measured in the same way that we measure the impact of other energies, such as the flow of electricity through a voltmeter. It's just not how it works. Just because energy can mean that spiritual power doesn't mean we can measure it, and it doesn't mean that science is giving credence to it. It simply means that it's part of the system of definitions used in the English language. It's a one-star misuse. It's not that bad. Most people are barely misusing it, but the misuse generally combines with the other terms that have been listed to further solidify this. So why are we doing this? These people can't... They have access to the internet too. There's no way there's no way that the people that are writing the books that are then informing other people, and they're learning without knowing how they're learning it wrong, there's no way they can't know what they're doing. And they do know what they're doing. They do this because it gives them authority, because science has authority. I mean, it was taught in school after all. Well, so is art. Art isn't always done the way your art teacher taught you. Any artist will tell you that. Science is given authority because science is, to our minds, provable. And this says something about any mystic that needs to use science to give authority to their magic. That means they don't have complete faith and direction in their magic. And that means that they're not really going to practice at their very best. You don't need science to prove your magic. In fact, science isn't going to prove your magic. It's not what science does. Magic works over large-scale events, over time, over probabilities that science is not equipped to even begin to measure. If magic hinged on science, then it would make no sense why drawing a circle and saying it can't have any effect. So there's got to be some kind of alternative to this. Well, there is. I brought up just a basic outline. The 7 Hermetic principles are a good alternative to this. And they provide the principle of mentalism, which is all things are in the mind, which could be said to be the only principle of magic. We recognize the mind is the root of all perception, and therefore, to alter the mind is to alter the universe. Correspondence, so is above, so is below, that is whatever we change in the other realms, we change in this realm. Vibration, hey, there's a scientific term. Remember I said it wasn't misused as badly? Using the basic understanding that nothing rests. Everything is always in motion, always vibrates. Understanding this is incredibly useful. And understanding the term vibration to mean that is equally useful. So we got to kind of sneak a scientific term in there. Polarity. Everything has 2 sides to it. Gender. I kind of disagree with this one. Because I feel it's just an extension of polarity. So I'm just gonna go and smash gender into polarity. Everything has multiple sides. Everything has a positive and a negative, a yin and a yang. You don't need gender to hit on that. Rhythm. Okay? Everything flows. Everything has patterns that can be changed, that can be moved, and that interact with each other. And then finally, cause and effect. That for every action, there is some kind of reaction. And magic hinges on this, but it all goes back to mentalism as the core founding principle. So, this is a better way of looking at your magic, looking at your mysticism, than trying to use scientific terms to back it up. If someone looks at what you're saying and they look up the science term and they find the information, they're going to think you're a dingbat. And that's the biggest problem I have with the misuse of science terms, is that when the uneducated, in our way of speaking, comes into our communities and sees this, they're going to look for more information that's going to make us look bad. So, I hope this has helped everyone expand a bit their knowledge on what these terms mean. I know that trying to explain frequency for me, is one of the hardest things, because technically, frequency means number of repetitions, but explaining that in energy is not something that is dynamic or easily visualized, even though I have a good grasp of what it is and why it is. We misuse these terms to give us authority, especially if we are not certain in our own magic. I really only use these terms to convey ideas. It's like a frequency. It's like a vibration. It's similar to quantum entanglement. All of this is very much like what it means to awaken the night within.